we can go ahead and call the Boston MPO UPWP committee meeting to order. My name is Derek Cravat. I am from MassDOT's Office of Transportation Planning. I will be assuming the role as the chair of this committee. We recently had some staffing changes within our MPO activities group in OTP. But for sort of the future and moving forward, I will be serving as the permanent liaison for the Boston MPO and will serve as the committee chair for this committee. So thank you to Derek Schuster for serving in this role in an interim capacity, but I'll be chairing moving forward. So with that, I will first read the meeting guidelines and accessibility statement before we get into introductions. So for virtual meeting guidelines, all participants will join the meeting with muted microphones. On Zoom, please do rename yourself to include your first name, last name, and your affiliation. You are able to mute and unmute yourselves. To participate in the discussion, though, please select the raise hand function, which you can find by clicking on the participants button at the bottom of the screen, and a window will pop up with the raised hand button at the bottom. You can also use the reactions button in the toolbar, and I will then call on you as the chair. If you are on the phone, you can use *9 to raise your hand. And if you have technical difficulties, please contact Matt Archer via the chat box or via email at marcher@ctps.org or by phone at 857-702-3708. So the accessibility statement reads that this meeting is being recorded and is accessible to people with disabilities. Zoom products are compliant with exceptions to the following standards: Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1, Level AA standards, and revised Section 508 standards. If you require any additional accommodations in order to participate fully in the meeting, please contact Matt Archer of the MPO staff at marcher@ctps.org or 857-702-3708. Thank you. So we'll now move to introductions. Again, my name is Derek Cravat from the Massachusetts Department of Transportation and UPWP Committee Chair. I will now read the roll to introduce members that are present. So I'll call the organization name, and then if anybody from that organization or town is present, or city, please introduce yourself. First, we have MAPC.
Good morning. This is Eric Barassa.
Morning, Eric. Arlington.
Daniel Amstutz out of Arlington.
Morning, Daniel. The BPDA. Okay. Boston Transportation Department. Okay. City of Framingham.
Erica Oliver Jerem, City of Framingham.
Good morning, Erica. Medway. Okay. City of Newton.
Good morning, David Koza, City of Newton.
Good morning, David. Norwood.
Good morning, Tom O'Rourke, Town of Norwood.
Morning, Tom. Westwood, representing Trick subregion.
Yeah, Steve Olenoff, I'm the Trick alternate.
Morning, Steve. Somerville.
Good morning, Tom Bent, City of Somerville.
Morning, Tom. RTAC.
Leonard Diggins, RTAC Chair.
Morning, Leonard. Are there any other MPO members present? I did not call. Okay. So I'll now move to the next agenda item, unless Sandy, do you want to introduce an MPO staff?
No, I think we usually just skip the introducing MPO staff. So
okay, sounds good. All right, we'll move to the next agenda item, public comments. Are there any members of the public that would like to make a comment at this time? You can raise your hand or use *9 if you're on the phone. Seeing none, you can also email staff at sjohnston@ctps.org if you have any comments during the meeting or at any other time, feel free to raise your hand and we will call on you. So we'll now move to agenda item 3, which is an action item, summary of the September 2nd, 2021 meeting. Is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes, or excuse me, meeting summary from the September 2nd meeting?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Eric. Is there a second?
Yeah, second.
Okay, great. Any questions or comments in the minutes? All right, seeing none, I will read the roll. MassDOT OTP, I vote yes. MAPC,
Yes.
okay. Town of Arlington,
Arlington votes yes.
City of Framingham,
I abstain. I was not present. So Erica Jerem abstains.
City of Newton,
David Kozis, yes.
Town of Norwood,
Town of Norwood, yes.
great. Westwood,
Steve Olenoff, I'm the trick alternate, so I don't vote.
okay. Thanks, Steve. Sorry about that. City of Somerville,
Yes.
and RTAC.
RTAC, yes.
Okay, great. So that motion carries. Thank you, everybody. And summary has been approved. So we'll now move to the next item, which is Amendment 1 to the Federal Fiscal Year 2022 Unified Planning Work Program. Sandy, do you want to first briefly recap this amendment?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. So supporting materials for this amendment are available on the meeting calendar. It's pretty straightforward. It extends $45,000 in unused federal fiscal year 2021 3C funds for two major purposes that support the MPOs and CTPS's strategic goals. It extends $20,000 to be used for new skill development early in fiscal year 22, with focus on preparing some of our staff to implement a new suite of modeling tools. And that's enabled by a light load of non-MPO funded project work at the beginning of fiscal year 22, which has created staff availability and presents an opportunity to immediately and efficiently use these funds. There's also $25,000 that will be extended from labor and overhead to some direct costs in fiscal year 22. Those will be used to procure support from Caliper, which is the developer of the travel demand software, TransCAD, that we use. And Caliper's support will provide a one-time opportunity to accelerate the development of the next phase of travel demand modeling tools. The overall the amendment increases the 22 UPWP budget by $45,000 because the funds being used are extended FFY 2021 funds. There's no negative impact to work programmed in the fiscal year 22 UPWP that you just endorsed. The amendment also makes several minor typo corrections and some textual corrections, such as inserting project ID numbers where we had previously left them TBD in the draft document. On the meeting calendar, you can find a short memo summarizing this material, the reasoning and need behind the amendment. There's a table that's in the memo that's also up on the slide right now. And then we have two versions of the UPWP as requested, and one that is a PDF of what the document will look like if this amendment is endorsed, and then a redlined marked up version showing where changes have been made. So I and other staff are happy to take any questions at this time if you have them.
Thanks, Sandy. Any questions for Sandy or staff? Okay, seeing none. Thank you for that summary, Sandy. So with that, I'll ask for a motion and second to, sort of approve that this be recommended for release for public comment at this morning's MPO meeting.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I'll read the roll. MassDOT OTP votes yes. MAPC,
Eric Barassa, yes.
Town of Arlington,
Daniel Lamp votes yes.
City of Framingham,
Erica Jerem votes yes.
City of Newton,
David Kozis, yes.
Town of Norwood,
Tom O'Rourke, yes.
City of Somerville,
City Somerville, yes.
RTAC.
Advisory Council, yes.
Okay, great. So with that, this is approved to release for public comment at the MPO meeting at 10 a.m. today. So thank you, Sandy. And members. So with that, we'll move to agenda item 5, which is update on sub-regional outreach. So I think this is you as well, Sandy.
Yeah, thank you. So at the previous meeting in September, members of the committee had requested that I update you on our plans for sub-regional outreach and other outreach plans for this fall to support the development of the fiscal year 2023 UPWP. And what I am showing here on the slide is just a neat table with the MAPC sub-regional meetings that we're doing. We're hitting all eight sub-regions by the middle of December. I'm putting the link to the sub-regional maps and definitions in the link in case anybody's interested. I was going to send these out by email before we got any of them started, but we got several of them on the calendar on the earlier side of what we had been expecting. So we've already done 3 of them. In addition to sub-regional outreach, I spoke with the Mbta Rider Oversight Committee on Tuesday about 2023 UPWP development. There will also be a public-facing survey, probably in December. We'll be generating ideas internally and reaching out to partner agencies down the line over the next several months. It's also possible you'll be hearing about that from someone other than me, as I think you've heard at the MPO meeting the last time around. So, you know, as always, we encourage any of you who are able to come to the sub-regional meetings or to provide me with information about other groups that you think it would be productive for us to talk to. We do have some limited bandwidth due to unfilled positions, but we'll try to talk to as many folks as possible to gain ideas and support the development of the new UPWP. So I'm happy to take any questions that you have.
I can ask a question. This is David. I'm just wondering, Sandy, how it looks like you've had 3 meetings or 2 meetings so far. How's the attendance been?
I would say it's maybe been a tad lower than it was last year. I feel like at the last year people were still in the phase of kind of embracing digital meetings, and that attendance has maybe gone down a slight bit. I think the ICC meeting in particular was so that the ICC meeting that we did was focused with ICC intercore transportation planners. And I think, David, you've been at some of those meetings, and we've been doing them for a year and a half now. And I think this is probably the smallest of the ones that we've done. That being said, I think it was just a very busy week. So I wouldn't read too much into it. The Magic meeting was pretty well attended. I think Trick was about normal. And we'll see. I mean, I'm happy to report back to the committee on also how the rest of them go. And keep in mind that, you know, I'm going out to these meetings to talk about the UPWP, but this is all of our MPO products where, you know, Matt Genova comes along to talk about the TIP, and Michelle Scott and Ann McGann are coming also to talk about the long range plan. So it's really 45 minutes to an hour of MPO discussion on top of the other agenda items that the subregions typically do.
Good point. Thank you.
Leonard, I see you have a hand raised.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Just a quick question, no agenda here. I mean, are those meetings recorded, Sandy?
I believe they typically are. I don't know if MAPC posts them in one centralized place. Maybe Eric can answer that question. Or if they're on the sub-regional web pages.
Are the sub-regional meetings recorded? That's your question, Len?
Yes.
That's a good question. I don't actually know, but if they were, yeah, they would be on the sub-region page. I can give that a quick look right now and let you know.
No, because I mean, that might also explain attendance, because I mean, there are lots of times I don't attend meetings. I mean, I will go ahead and double book myself because I know that I can watch the meeting and later on get the content, and then because of the availability of staff, may get my concerns and questions answered later on. So I was just asking from that point of view. That's all. No, not pressing it one way or another. Thanks.
Any other questions for Sandy? Great. So Sandy, at these meetings, what are some of the topics that are discussed? Is it sort of like potential ideas for corridor studies and things of that nature?
Yeah, I basically try to keep the discussion pretty simple and say, like, you know, here's the UPWP process. It's a little bit complex, But what we really need to hear from you is ideas for studies, for generating data, basically trying to position the MPO as an entity that can be supportive of our municipalities and see what are the study ideas and technical assistance ideas that are important to them. And yeah, as you all know, we do these corridor studies every year, and I think we generate a lot of the ideas for specific corridors to look at from these sub-regional meetings. We definitely hear a lot about transit topics. I think that's definitely a high level of concern right now. Is like, what is the future of the transit network going to look like? What are the impacts of the pandemic going to be for the long term? What's going on with the MBTA's network redesign and different transformation projects that they've got going on, and how can the municipalities engage with that? So it's there are themes that keep coming up, but also it's good to go around and kind of hear about the local needs in each of the subregions.
Gotcha. Okay. Sounds good. Yeah, David?
So I'm just wondering, as we're sort of hopefully going to be getting out of, this pandemic, what has the experience been in terms of participation in person in the past for these kind of meetings versus Zoom? And have we started to think about, I guess all of these will be probably on Zoom, but maybe in the spring, how are we going to, or for next year, are we starting to think about in person or some sort of combination, or sticking with Zoom?
So I think we're having further discussions about that with the MPO at some point in November or December. Jonathan, do we have a date for that?
We're doing that in January, Sandy, and that's when David asked us to come back with it. So we are looking into that now, and we will have more to present to the MPO in January.
Yeah. I will say that from my perspective, meetings that bring in people from across the region, there is a real kind of logistical advantage to doing it virtually. One of the other hats I wear at CTPS is running the transit working group. And those meetings are probably going to stay predominantly, if not entirely, virtual permanently, because participation has been much higher virtually. The sub-regional meetings, I don't know, and maybe Eric can speak to what MEPC's and the sub-regional coordinators' experience has been. As I said it before, I think there was kind of a burst of higher participation toward the beginning of the pandemic because people realized they can do it from home. That's maybe fallen off a little bit recently, but I'm also interested in hearing what other folks' experience has been.
Yeah, I mean, I can say that at MAPC, before COVID, we did, a huge part of what we do as an agency is events. And I would say at any given day of the week, there was some event in our conference room. And now all of that is virtual. And, we used to, it would be nice if we had 40, 50 people, participate in a meeting or an event. And now we routinely get 100, 150, people participate, sometimes 200 people on a webinar. And then for the sub-regional meetings, we've also seen just an increase in participation. And so I think there's a recognition that we have to keep a virtual component to these things moving forward. And I think the challenge is, how do we do that in a hybrid atmosphere too, where we still want to maybe do some in-person events. And so we do have, our community engagement staff have been trying to work on that. And we actually did a webinar on, what makes a good hybrid meeting and trying to figure those things out. But I think a lot of that's unknown. But I think without a doubt, David, we want to figure out how to keep a virtual component because it has dramatically increased the amount of people who participate, in these meetings. And I think we all agree that you can have meaningful participation through these virtual platforms.
Right, and we've certainly had the same experience at the local level across the board at all meetings. So much more participation virtually. I'm just, so it seems obvious that that's going to stay. I'm just hoping that there's not any kind of particular people that we're somehow missing. That's the only concern.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yep, Tom?
The question I had, and be a good one for Eric and David, with these virtual events, are you seeing is the level of discussion there? Because one of the things I've noticed is, because I've been back to some in-person meetings also, And what I'm finding is in some of my meetings, they're going a lot faster virtually than the in-person meetings went before. And I think because if you're in a room with a lot of people, you're kind of reading somebody's body language across the table. And, you're kind of, I think there's more, I just get the feeling there's more participation, more questions get asked. Whereas on the virtual format, people might be waiting to see if somebody else asked a question, or you might be the ninth in line, and by the time you get to that point, you kind of lost interest in your question. So I was just wondering what you guys have experienced with some of your meetings, but because I noticed that some of my other meetings, and these are more on the private side, through my company, you'd have a project meeting and you would zip through it, where I knew if we were all in person, that project meeting wouldn't be 25 minutes, it'd be 3 hours or 2 hours, because a lot of questions get brought up, and there's more interaction. I guess that's the thing I'm looking at. So do you feel like you are getting that interaction, or it's people just listening and it's an easier format? So people that didn't really have a lot of skin in that game, or maybe sitting on that webinar, that they probably wouldn't have gone, into Boston to see. So just a kind of a thought.
Yeah, no, we've been talking about like the different types of meetings. And so when there are meetings that are really about like, getting information out, then I think the virtual platform works really great. When it's a meeting where you really need to like roll up your sleeves and have a really like deep conversation, I think that's where these meetings are harder, and you can't have as deep as a conversation. And then we've also heard with the subregions, a big part of the bringing of folks together was also the sort of the pre and post conversations that the little one-on-ones that people would have, the kind of networking and the organic, just, oh, hey, I'm working on this thing and I heard you guys are doing something similar, kind of conversations that we're missing, that kind of stuff. And that's the idea, where we still want to try to foster that with that collaboration with in-person meetings, but then have the ability for somebody who, for whatever reason, has difficulty traveling into our office or for that day, can still participate. But I agree with you, Tom. I think for some meetings it works great. For other meetings, the conversation is not as deep, and it's harder to do. So yeah, we have to be mindful about how we plan these meetings. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Good point. Leonard?
If anything, Tom, because I'm dealing on the municipal side a lot. We're having longer meetings because people are participating more, and so we're not finding any shyness in participating in our meetings. And yeah, there is that before and after stuff, and in the body language stuff. But I'll tell you, in a room, you can't necessarily see everyone's body language, but when everyone's on the screen, you can see, and you can have those side conversations in chat. And I remember in the early days of the internet, when it was really clear this trend was going on, people were kind of talking about, well, I wouldn't be able to like kind of page through a book and run into random stuff, or go to a library and find another book that I'm not necessarily looking for. But dare I say, all of us are happy with the availability of information on the internet. So I kind of take that model of progress when I think about the Zoom meetings. We may lose some things temporarily, but I think we'll gain more.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions for Sandy? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Sandy. So before we move to the next item, I see we've been joined by Mbta Patterson from the MBTA Advisory Council. So I do apologize for not calling you during the roll for the action items, but did just want to see, Mbta, if you had any comments on those action items. I don't believe, like, procedurally we have to go back and vote again, since we did have a quorum and those items were approved, but did just want to offer the opportunity in case you had any questions or comments on.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for the platform. No, I completely agree with both of those actions being passed. And I'm happy to be here representing the MBTA Advisory Board on behalf of Brian Hayes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Amir. Okay, the next item.
You are muted, Derek.
Derek, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Next item is member items, agenda item 6. Do any attendees or members have any items that they'd like to raise? Yes, Daniel, I see your hand raised. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. This is more of just like a notification, let people know that we are we've kicked off a project to take a harder look at the Minuteman Bikeway in Arlington. We just call it the Minuteman Bikeway Plating Project to try to make it safer, more accessible, a better experience for users of the Minuteman Bikeway in Arlington. And so we're doing a lot of promotion of this. We've got a survey that's out and a public meeting in a few weeks. I sent this over to Roisin already, but the the Bikeway is an extremely important resource, not just in Arlington, but throughout the region. So, I've been just letting people know about it, adjacent communities and so on as well, that because there's a lot of users that go through Arlington, whether going into the city or coming out, like out to Lexington or Bedford. So I just want to let people know about that. And on the town's website, we've got like right at the front, we've got an image and a link to learn more about what's going on with the project. And we're working with Kittles and Associates to do this project. And then the other thing I'll mention is another major project we're working on is a Mass Trails grant we got to do a feasibility study for a trail from the Mystic River over to the Bikeway. So it's sort of still Bikeway adjacent to that. And we'll be working with Medford on that, because that has to do with Route 60 and the 2 rotaries that are over on Mystic Valley Parkway next to the Mystic River, which will be, the idea is to create a really important regional trail link there that will link up not only to Medford and Arlington, but to lots of the other trails in the system. So did some goings on in Arlington. I just wanted to let people know. And so if there's any more information, please feel free to reach out to me.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. Tom?
I just wanted to let Eric and Tegan know I will not be able to make the MPO meeting today or the TIP ad hoc committee meetings. Brad Rawson from the city of Somerville, who's my alternate, will be filling in for me.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Oh, and thanks to Amir, I see this is Dan again, for sharing the survey in the chat.
Oh,
yeah, perfect. Yes, thanks, Amir. Okay, with that, I think we'll move to the next item, which is next meeting. The next meeting is expected to be November 18th, 2021 at 9 a.m. same time, to recommend that the MPO endorse the amendment to the UPWP that gets voted out today. Any questions or comments on the next meeting plans? Okay, so with that, I think I will ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Thanks, Eric. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Do we usually ask all in favor for this one, Sandy? Or we just once?
That's correct. Don't do a roll call. Just ask for ayes or nays.
Okay.
Yeah, we usually do without objection.
That's true. Right, without objection.
Okay, so without objection, I guess I'll ask all of you. Please say aye. Apologies for the,
Aye.
So long.
okay.
Thanks,
half hour.
everybody.
Okay. So not seeing any objections. So thank you all for bearing with me for my first UPWP committee meeting here today, and I'll brush up on my Robert's rules. And with that, I think we are adjourned. So we'll see you all at the MPO meeting. Thanks, everybody.